Welcome back. I'm your host, Dr. Jennifer Thompson, and I am so glad that you're here with me today. I want to start this episode with something I hear a lot. And maybe you've said it at some point in your life or relationships. Maybe you've heard someone that you love say it. Maybe it's been said to you. I can't live without you. We've heard it in movies. We've heard it in songs. We've said it in the heights of our feeling deeply connected to someone, a partner, a best friend, maybe even a family member. And we've been conditioned to believe that this is what love sounds like, that needing someone this completely is the ultimate expression of connection. I want to offer you a different idea today, a framework that I believe changes everything about how you understand relationships. Can be romantic, friendships, family, professional, all of it. What if the most beautiful, most sustainable, most genuinely loving relationships are not the ones where you feel like you can't live without someone, but the ones where you are so whole, so grounded, so self-sustaining that you choose to share your life with them, not from need, not from fear, not from the terror of being alone, but from genuine, free, eyes wide open desire. There's a profound difference between needing someone and choosing someone. And today we are going to talk about what makes that difference possible, energetically, emotionally, and spiritually. We are going to talk about frequency and about alignment, about what it means to attract relationships that match who you actually are, and what happens when you grow and your frequency shifts and the relationships in your life have to recalibrate. We're going to talk about all kinds of relationships, romantic, partners, friendships, family, and the people that you work with, because the energetic principles at play are the same across all of them. This is an episode about connection. But more than that, it's an episode about wholeness, because the quality of every relationship in your life is at its root a reflection of the relationship that you have with yourself. Let's get started. Okay, so let me start at the foundation, because I think before we can talk about relationships, we have to talk about energy. And I know that this word gets thrown around a lot, but I want to ground it in something real and tangible for you. Everything in the universe is energy. Everything is vibrating at a frequency. This is not just a spiritual idea. This is physics. So at the quantum level, every atom, every molecule, every cell in your body is in constant motion, constantly vibrating. Your thoughts carry a frequency. Your emotions carry a frequency. The state of your nervous system, whether you are in fight or flight or rest and digest, is a frequency. The beliefs running your subconscious, the stories that you tell about yourself and the world, the trapped emotions stored in your body, all of it is contributing to the overall frequency of your energy field. And here is where it gets directly relevant to every relationship in your life. Your energy field is not invisible to people around you. It is not contained neatly inside your skin. Your field extends outward. It communicates, it interacts with the fields of everyone you encounter. So before a single word is spoken, before a conscious impression is formed, your energy is already in conversation with theirs. You know this. You've felt it. You walked into a room and immediately felt uncomfortable without knowing why. You've met someone for the first time and immediately feel like you know them. You've been around someone who is performing happiness, but you felt the heaviness underneath it. You've been in a conversation that was perfectly polite, but you feel so drained in a way that you couldn't explain. That is energy. It's frequency. That is your field reading theirs and theirs reading yours. And the law of resonance, which I talked about in the previous episode, tells us that what you consistently vibrate at is what you will draw into your life, not just attract. You actually resonate with. So when two tuning forks are tuned to the same frequency, strike one and the other begins to vibrate on its own without even being touched. This is resonance. And that is, at the most fundamental level, how relationships work. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are. You attract what you are currently vibrating, what is stored in your field, what your nervous system believes is normal and familiar and safe. And I think you know this, but this is not about blame. This is not about saying that if your relationships have been painful, it's your fault. That is not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that your relationships are always, on some level, a mirror. They reflect back to you your current frequency, your current beliefs about love, about worth, about safety, and about what you deserve. And when you understand that, you stop looking only outward to fix your relationships and you start looking inward, where the real work happens. We've heard all about the phrase, like attracts like. And there is a deep truth to this. But I want to unpack it a little more. Because in the context of relationships, it can get misunderstood in ways that are actually harmful. Like attracts like does not mean that you only attract people who are identical to you. It doesn't mean that if you're a good person, you'll only encounter good people. And it absolutely does not mean that if something painful has happened in your relationships, you must be a painful person or a bad person. What it means on an energetic level is that your frequency will consistently draw people and dynamics that resonate with what's active in your field. And what's active in your field includes not just your conscious intentions and desires, but your subconscious patterns, your unhealed wounds, your nervous system's definition of normal, and the trapped emotions that are quietly shaping your relational world from underneath. Let me give you an example of how this actually plays out. So someone who grew up in an environment where love felt very conditional, where affection was earned, not freely given, may find themselves in repeated relationships where they are overgiving and overperforming, constantly working for approval, not because they want that dynamic, not because they're choosing it consciously, but because their nervous system learned early that this is what love feels like. The familiar frequency of conditional love is what their field is tuned to. And so they keep resonating with people who recreate it. So someone who grew up learning that they couldn't really trust people, that intimacy was dangerous, that getting close meant getting hurt, may find themselves consistently drawing partners or friends who are emotionally unavailable. This is because their field is sending a signal that says, on some level, I expect distance. I expect to have to work for connection. I expect that getting too close means pain. And the field finds people who match that signal. Or at work, someone who carries deep beliefs about not being valued, about their contributions going unrecognized, may find themselves repeatedly in professions or professional environments where they are overlooked, underestimated, or underpaid. The outer dynamic keeps reflecting the inner beliefs. Again, this is not blame. This is the field doing what it does, operating from what it knows until it learns something different. And here is the best part of it all. The field can be changed. The frequency, it can shift. Our subconscious patterns can be updated. These trapped emotions that have been running the show can be released. And when the inner frequency changes, the outer reality responds. New people enter. Old dynamics shift. The mirror shows you something completely different because you are different. And this is why the inner work is not separate from the relational work. It is the relational work. The most direct path to transforming your relationships is transforming your frequency. So let's talk about alignment in relationships, because I think that this word is another one that gets used a lot without really being defined. So I want to get very specific because I think a lot of people have settled for relationships that look like alignment from the outside but don't feel like it from the inside. And a lot of people have walked away from relationships that may have genuinely been aligned because the alignment felt unfamiliar and therefore, of course, uncomfortable. Alignment in relationships is not the absence of friction. It's not constant agreement because we are going to disagree as humans. It is not the feeling of never being challenged or stretched. Alignment is a resonance between your core frequencies, your values, your vision, the way of moving through the world, your fundamental sense of what matters. It is the feeling of being met, of being seen for who you actually are, not who you perform yourself to be. And we all know that feeling. Not who someone needs us to be. That's another really big one, right? But who you actually are. And of genuinely seeing the other person the same way. Aligned relationships feel like ease. Again, not the absence of effort, but the absence of constant strain. There is a difference between the effort of two people who genuinely want to build something together and the exhausting, chronic effort of trying to maintain a connection that was never really built on resonance in the first place. Aligned relationships feel safe enough to be honest, safe enough to disagree. They feel safe enough to have a hard conversation without the whole structure threatening to collapse. They feel safe enough to show the parts of yourself that you don't show everyone and have those parts received rather than used against you. Aligned relationships feel expansive. Like being in them makes you more yourself, not less. You don't have to hide who you are. Like the connection feeds your growth rather than requiring you to shrink in order to maintain it. So this is what misaligned relationships often feel like. Because I think that many people have been in them for so long that they normalize the feeling. Misaligned relationships often feel like work in a very exhausting way. Like you are constantly translating yourself, constantly editing and managing and performing a version of yourself that fits what the relationship seems to require. They feel like you are always slightly braced, right? Never fully at rest, always having to monitor. Is this okay? Did I say that the wrong way? Are they pulling away? And here's the thing. They can feel intensely charged. And this is where a lot of people confuse misalignment with passion. The intense push and pull of an anxious attachment dynamic can feel like chemistry. The relief of reconnection after conflict can feel like love. The highs and the lows of an unstable connection can feel like aliveness compared to the steadiness of something genuinely healthy. But what that charge is, in many cases, it's not alignment, it's activation. Your nervous system is activated. It's in a familiar state of hypervigilance, and it's interpreting that activation as intensity and passion and connection. Real alignment is often much quieter than that, more steady, more sustainable. It doesn't mean boring. It means safe. And for a nervous system that has never fully experience safe love. And that steadiness can feel, at first, almost alarmingly calm. Like something must be wrong because nothing is wrong. Learning to trust the quiet is part of the work. Learning to recognize alignment even when it doesn't feel like the storm that you're used to. And now I want to talk about something that I don't believe gets discussed enough. What happens when you change, when your frequency genuinely shifts and the relationships in your life have to respond to that shift? That can be a very scary feeling, because here is what I know to be true. You will not always be the same frequency. You are not a fixed point. You are a growing, evolving, healing being. And as you do the inner work, as you release what doesn't belong to you, as you expand your capacity, as you heal the wounds that were running your relational world from underneath, your frequency changes. And when your frequency changes, your resonance changes too. What you match with changes. What feels aligned, it changes. What feels intolerable, that changes too. And this is such a beautiful thing. And to be honest, it's also sometimes a profoundly disorienting and grief-filled thing. Because some of the relationships that made complete sense at your old frequency, your friendships, your family dynamics, even romantic partners, may not make the same sense at the new one. You may find yourself in friendships that you've had for years and realize that what you used to feel comfortable with now feels constricting. That the dynamic that used to feel familiar now feels like a version of yourself that you've outgrown. The conversations that used to satisfy you now leave you feeling hollow. This is not betrayal. This is not you becoming a bad friend or a bad family member. This is the natural, inevitable consequence of growth. You have changed, and the relationship is being asked to either grow with you or clarify that it cannot. I have walked through this personally so many times. There were friendships in my life that I genuinely treasured, and I still do. People that I had history with, shared experiences, I had real affection for. And as my healing progressed, as my frequency shifted, I started to notice that certain dynamics within those friendships felt misaligned in ways that I could no longer ignore. Patterns of relating that I used to participate in unconsciously, giving more than I received or minimizing my own experience to keep the peace, laughing off things that actually hurt, stopped being invisible to me. And I had to choose. Stay quiet and continue the old dynamic and show up more authentically and see what that relationship could hold. Some of those friendships deepened and some fell away. Both were right. The falling away of relationships that no longer resonates is not a failure. It is a natural completion. Every relationship has a season. Some seasons are long and some are short. Some friendships are meant to walk with you through a lifetime, and some are meant to be present for a chapter, to teach you something, to reflect something back to you, to hold you through a particular part of your journey. Releasing a relationship with love and gratitude, even when it hurts, and it does hurt, is one of the most spiritually mature things that a person can do. And here's the other side of this. When your frequency shifts, new relationships also begin to appear. People start entering your life who match the new version of you. Connections that feel different from anything that you've ever experienced before. More genuine, more mutual, more nourishing. This is not a coincidence. This is resonance. You have changed your frequency and your field is finding new matches. Okay, so now I want to go to the heart of what I believe is one of the most important conversations that we can have about relationships. And it starts with that phrase that we talked about in the beginning. I can't live without you. We have been so deeply conditioned to believe that this is love, that the intensity of need, the terror of loss, the feeling of being utterly incomplete without someone else is what love looks like at the fullest. Movies are built around this. Songs are written about this. We celebrate it as the ultimate romantic ideal. And what I want to say is that this is one of the most damaging myths about love that our culture perpetuates. I can't live without you is not love. It's attachment. It's dependency. It is two people who have consciously or unconsciously outsourced pieces of themselves to this relationship. Their sense of worth, their emotional regulation, their identity, their feeling of safety in the world, and are now terrified to lose it because losing it means losing themselves. That kind of relationship does not feel like freedom. It feels like captivity. It feels like that you are holding on to the other person for your life because at some level you've made them responsible for it. And I want to offer you a completely different vision of what love can look like. Imagine two people who are each independently whole, not perfect, because whole is not the same as perfect, but genuinely self-sustaining. They have done or are doing the work of knowing themselves, of regulating their own nervous systems, of not needing another person to complete them because they are not fragmented. They have their own sense of identity, their own source of worth, their own relationship with themselves that is solid enough to stand on. And from that place of wholeness, they choose each other every day, not because they are terrified of what life looks like on the other side of not having that person, but because they genuinely want to share life with this person, because their relationships adds richness and depth and joy and partnership to a life that was already on its own full. That is not a need. It's a choice. And there is a huge difference between the two. This applies to every kind of relationship. A friendship where you stay not because you genuinely enjoy and value each other, but because you're afraid of being alone or the confrontation that would come with the distance. The family dynamic that you maintain not from love, but from obligation or fear of judgment. The professional relationship that you stay in because you don't want to believe that you deserve better, or because you've been financially or emotionally dependent in an unhealthy way. And in all of these, the question is the same. Am I here by choice or am I here by need? Am I here in this relationship because it genuinely nourishes me, challenges me in healthy ways, and adds to my life? Or because I am afraid of what it would mean to leave it? High emotional intelligence in a relationship looks like two people who can each name what they feel, take responsibility for their own emotional states, and not require the other person to manage their inner world for them. It looks like the ability to be in conflict without conflict becoming a threat to the entire relationship. It looks like being able to say, I am hurt without weaponizing the hurt. Being able to say, this isn't working for me without it being the end of everything. Emotional regulation, the ability to stay within your window of tolerance, to process your feelings without bypassing them or being consumed by them, is one of the greatest gifts that you can bring to a relationship. Because a regulated nervous system does not need the other person to be responsible for its state. It can feel, it can metabolize, it can respond rather than react. When two regulated, emotionally intelligent, self-sustaining people come together, the relationship is built on a completely different foundation than need or fear. It is built on genuine resonance, on choice, on the simple, profound daily decision to share life with someone who reflects the best of who you both are. That is a relationship worth building toward. In romantic partnership, in friendship, in family, and every connection that matters to you. I want to spend a few minutes now on something that I find endlessly fascinating and endlessly useful. The idea of relationships as mirrors. Every significant relationship in your life is reflecting something back to you. The things that bother you most about another person, the qualities that irritate you, that trigger you, that you find yourself complaining about, are almost always pointing towards something within yourself. Either a part of you that you haven't fully acknowledged, or a wound that is being activated. Or it can be a boundary that needs to be set, or a belief that is running underneath your reaction. Carl Jung called this the shadow. The parts of ourselves that we have disowned, repressed, or not yet integrated. And one of the primary places that the shadow gets revealed is our relationships. The qualities that we find most intolerable in others are often the very qualities that we most resist in ourselves. And this is not very comfortable to sit with, but it is extraordinarily useful. So what about the partner who you feel never fully listens to you? Are there places in your life where you are not listening to yourself, where you are overriding your own knowing or dismissing your own needs, talking yourself out of your own truth? The friend who always needs rescuing. Is there a part of you that has a deep, unexamined need to be needed, that finds worth in being the one who holds everything together? The colleague who takes credit for others' work. Where in your own life are you not fully claiming your worth, not advocating for what you've built and what you deserve? Look, this mirror is not always comfortable, but it is always generous, because it shows you exactly where the work is, exactly where your own frequency is creating a gap between what you want in a relationship and what you're currently experiencing. And on the other side of the mirror, the things that you most love and admire about people close to you are also reflections. They are showing you qualities that exist in you, perhaps qualities that you haven't fully claimed yet, haven't given yourself permission to embody. The people we most admire are often holding a frequency that is calling us forward, showing us who we are becoming. Pay attention to what your relationships are showing you. They are one of the most precise and personal feedback systems available to you. So what does it actually look like to build relationships from wholeness rather than from need? I'm going to make this very practical and as real as I can. It starts with the relationship that you have with yourself. This is not cliche. It is the literal foundation of every other relationship in your life. How you talk to yourself, how much you trust yourself, how well you know yourself, how compassionately you treat yourself when you fall short. All of this shapes your frequency, and therefore it shapes every connection you have. Building a relationship with yourself means developing the capacity to be alone without being lonely, to sit with your own company and find it sufficient, to not need external validation to know your own worth. This is not about isolation or independence as a wall. It is about independence as a root. The deeper the root, the more freely the branches can reach towards others. It means doing the inner work consistently and honestly, clearing the trapped emotions that have been quietly shaping your relational world, updating the subconscious beliefs about love and worth and safety that were formed in childhood and never questioned, widening the window of tolerance so that intimacy doesn't trigger your nervous system into survival mode. It means learning to regulate, to feel your emotions without being controlled by them, to bring yourself back to the center without requiring someone else to do it for you, to be a safe place for others because you have first learned to be a safe person for yourself. And it also means choosing relationships consciously, asking yourself, not just, do I feel strongly about this person, but is this relationship genuinely nourishing? Does it reflect my values? Does it bring out the best in me? Am I more myself in this connection or less? You are allowed to be intentional about who you share your energy with. Your energy is not infinite. Your time is not infinite. Being selective, choosing depth and quality, alignment. This is what relationships are about. So before I close, I want to give you something to sit with this week. It's not a technique, but it's a set of questions. Pick one significant relationship in your life. It can be romantic, friendship, family, professional, and ask yourself honestly, am I in this relationship by choice or by need? Does this relationship reflect who I am now or who I used to be? What is this relationship showing me about my own frequency? Do I feel more myself or less myself in this connection? If I were operating from complete wholeness and self-sufficiency, would I choose this relationship? Would I choose it in the same way? And of course, you don't have to act on the questions today, but just let yourself see clearly. Clarity is always the first step. So let's bring it all home. Today we talked about relationships through the lens of energy, frequency, and alignment. We talked about how your field is always in conversation with the fields of the people around you, and how your current frequency shapes the relational reality you experience. We unpacked the difference between like attracts like as blame and like attracts like as information, and the profound possibility that exists when you shift your inner frequency. We talked about what alignment actually feels like, the ease and the safety and expansion, versus what misalignment feels like dressed up as passion. We talked about what happens when you grow and your relationships have to recalibrate, the grief of outgrowing some connections and the beauty of new ones appearing. And we sat with the heart of it all, the difference between needing someone and choosing someone, between relationships built on fear or aloneness and relationships built on genuine resonance between two whole people. You do not need to find someone who you can't live without. You need to become someone you love living with. And then from that wholeness, choose the people who reflect it. That is the work. It is the most important work there is. So if today's episode resonated, please share it, because I know that there is someone in your life right now who needs this conversation. And if you are ready to go deeper, if you want support in shifting the frequency that is shaping your relational world, I invite you to book an emotional code or body code session with me. The relational patterns that feel most stuck are almost always rooted in trapped emotions and subconscious beliefs that can be identified, addressed, and cleared. So until next time, choose yourself first. Everything else follows from there. I'll see you next time.